All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to be talking to you about the fastest changing topic in software today, which is AI coding assistance. This is a super fast moving space. Does everyone remember the Devon demo from last year? There was this demo where they just type in a prompt and Devon codes away the whole application. At the time, we're like, that's absurd. It's not going to work like that. Today, that's exactly what we're doing with AI coding, with agentic-based coding. So let me dive in. But before I do, I'll give you the context on where I'm coming from. I work for a company called First History, and we are a digital health SaaS company. So that means that both we're a startup, so we're trying to move as fast as possible, resource constrained, but at the same time, we're in this like highly regulated space where mistakes can be very impactful. So we need to be very high quality at the same time. We've been working in AI since 2022. We've had a number of successful collaborations with the Vector Institute to add AI capabilities to our application. And our tech stack is mostly TypeScript, Python, some of the big cloud providers. So a pretty standard technology stack. If you're using something very niche, it's probably going to have a different experience with these technologies. I'm interested to see where everyone here is at. So you've probably all tried AI and tried coding. Maybe put your hand up if you have used something other than Cursor or ChatGPT to do any coding. All right, great. Very knowledgeable audience. So as you all know, there are a ton of options out there. And so when I talk about AI coding assistants, I'm including ChatGPT and the other chat interfaces just because you can code very effectively in them. But then there are all these other different ways of using AI, and the different IDEs have AI built into them now. There are also code review tools. It can be really helpful to use a different product, a specific product for code review. If you're using AI to produce code, you have a different model, a different product to review that code. And then there's Model Context Protocol, which is a way of adding tools to your tool. And so if I get time, I'll get into that later. So with all these different options, how can you choose which one to use? You don't have time to trial every single one. So my recommendation would be to categorize them to understand which you might apply best to you. So the first one is to have a look at whether or not you're looking for a high-level versus a low-level tool. The low-level tools like Cursor and Windsurf are basically an IDE with an AI capability added onto it. And then the high-level tools, Lovable, V0, Bolt, these tools are abstracting away some of the code and are focusing more on the interface design, and probably better for either a front-end team or a non-technical audience, or for just really rapidly prototyping a application that has a user interface. The next point I'd like to make is that the model has a huge impact on how all of these tools work. And this can impact which tool you're going to use. So if you're trying to use one of the good ones like Sonnet 3.7, Gemini 2.5, there are tools that allow you to choose a specific model when you're coding. But then there are other tools that are going to either lock you into a specific model or not have you allow you to choose which model you're going to use. So bear that in mind as you're selecting your different tools. And then lastly, pricing is really impactful. Normally, we've got your tools, we've got a little added expense. It is possible to try to do this for free. So you've got your open source tools, and then you can locally host a model like Qwen or Llama. But in general, the really big, like multi-100 billion parameter models are going to have a significantly better user experience or generative power. And so I would encourage you to definitely at least trial the paid LLMs for your coding to see how well they can work. And so if you're using a paid tool, you've got two options. You've got pay per month, so per developer per month, we're looking at sort of like $20 to $40 per month. Or you've got pay by usage, and usage can get up to $20 to $40 per developer per day. So obviously there's a really big potential impact on the budget you're going to need for this. But they're highly capable, and so it can be worth that spend. So why are we doing these? Why are we even looking at AI coding assistants? Like, what are we trying to get out of them? The first one is that we can avoid having some of the toil, the tedious tasks like writing boilerplate code, writing unit tests, documentation, depending on how you feel or what you consider a good documentation. They can do some of that for you. But also now, more recently, they can actually help developers move faster. So we've seen that our developers, in some cases, have been able to move 5 to 10 times as fast as pre-AI coding tools. And part of that, the reason for that is saving the tedious tasks that I just mentioned. Another part of it is just saving the typing. They can sort of type completion, predict what you're going to type. But then there's also the other powers that they have just from the knowledge of an LLM. So problem solving, you don't have to wade through like multiple Google search results or go through Stack Overflow questions. Just kidding, no one uses Stack Overflow anymore. But it really helps you like get into the documentation and without needing to like go onto the internet and find it and search for it. It actually, you can just type into your AI to like help you and move faster that way. They're also really good at translating languages. So you all know how to code, but if you're switching to a new language, you can sort of offload the syntactical differences of the language onto the AI and help you switch languages. And I found that these speed enhancements have helped me, myself, like change the way I work. So one of the ways that I now work differently is that I'll have a couple of hours in between meetings, and I'm able to, like, with the help of an AI coding assistant, POC some new technology and trial it like within that couple of hours in a way that would have taken me days or weeks and involved context switching, and I might have considered investing my time elsewhere. So that can be really helpful. But then the other part of it is that I now think about creating one-off tools. So you go into your coding assistant, you have some sort of manual task, and you go into your coding assistant, give it a prompt, create a tool, and then use it for that manual task to help you automate the task, and then just throw away the tool. Like you don't have to worry about putting it into version control because you haven't spent a whole bunch of time creating this. And so that can be really helpful in your day-to-day work. And then lastly, it can actually improve quality. Back when I was programming in C#, my colleagues and I had spent significant time learning about how to write really good link queries so that avoiding round trips to the database. And that was gathered over like a significant period of time, where now I'm switching technologies so fast, I'm not necessarily going to know all those optimizations. And this is where we can lean on AI coding assistants to help us like with some of those optimizations to improve our code. So that's really helpful. So improved quality is one potential upside. Decreased quality is a potential downside. So we know that they can hallucinate, but they also, if developers start to like sort of switch their brain off and not think as much about the code, they just sort of generate the code, or it leads to people not remembering the code as well, not being able to reason about it as well. And that can lead to this vicious cycle where we're over-relying on AI and the tool to help us coding. And that can certainly lead to a decreased quality. It also leads to decreased connection to the code. And so we're trying to maintain that connection and that feeling of responsibility for the code. One of my friends, John Kennedy, said that at his company, to avoid that, they have new employees when they onboard, they have a window, like 60 days, that they will not be using any AI coding tools. And that forces the developers to just get into the weeds and get their hands dirty on the code, learn how to use it, and then add on the AI coding tool use to get that productivity boost. Another downside is obviously that we're going to be, not obviously, the job of the software developer changes now because we're spending less time doing software development and spending more time reviewing code. And that's both reviewing the code produced by the AI for us before we are putting it up for review, but also if our colleagues are more productive, they're producing more and then giving us more to review of theirs. And so more review, not necessarily great, but that's where we can start to try and leverage AI review tools to help us with that potential downside. Cost, I'd mentioned, can be a significant impact on using AI. Their inference isn't cheap, and so we are covering some of that cost. And then there's privacy and security. So being at a healthcare company, we never have patient data going into a non-locally hosted LLM. There's also the idea of when we're using AI, we're sharing our code with another company. And that can be concerning depending on how much you trust the LLM. I'm thinking DeepSeek, we won't necessarily want to share our code with an untrusted large company. This has become less of an issue more recently, I think, just because it's been a couple of years now and we haven't seen any issues come up with companies having their code compromised in this way. And these companies are a $100 billion company. Do you think it cares about Lachlan's first history code at the risk of their $100 billion of revenue? Probably not. So that's not really as much a concern these days. But still, we have guidelines around how people use AI when they're working in our differentiating core of our code base. Then the other side of security is that using AI coding tools can mean that security bugs can slip in. And this has been documented or commented on in social media where people have created production applications using one of the higher level tools. And then people have been able to find really easy hacks for those tools. So something to be aware of when you're rolling out a strategy. So with that, I've got a number of recommendations for you to think about when you're considering adopting new tools or rolling out an effective AI coding strategy. And the first one is to implement a very AI-forward culture. So the use of AI can be seen as ambiguous, whether or not it's seen as cheating or being lazy versus just being a maximally productive developer. And so you don't want any ambiguity about how you feel about AI. To this end, I've really enjoyed getting on specific water cooler chats with my team and sort of sharing what I'm working on and hearing what other people are experimenting with. and really just being super supportive of their AI coding journey. AI coding tools, as it says in the name, are a tool, and so just like any other tool, developers need time to start learning these tools. So I've had in my team people that felt reluctant to take time away from just crushing their tickets or whatever to actually take the time and read about how to be maximally productive with a tool and learn how to use it. And so it's important to basically give them the time and space to be able to do that. It's also helpful to have supporters for your tool. So this is where your seniors and your keeners are going to champion the use of a tool and hopefully teach others about how to use it. And also there's the money aspect. So they aren't free. So if people are trying to experiment, they need money to be able to do that. At my company, we pay for people's chat interface, and then we also give each developer an AI budget where they have a certain amount of money they can spend on either a subscription for a tool or the token usage for trying out and using with AI. And then lastly, there's the motivation piece. It seems counterintuitive that developers wouldn't be really enthusiastic about adopting something that can make them more productive. But often when companies roll out something that can enhance people's efficiency, the company's thinking more about that efficiency than the human element of this. And so that can lead people to feeling like job insecurity and sort of resentment, resist the adoption of the tool. So just make sure you're thinking about the developers themselves as you're rolling out tools and not just the potential productivity gains. Emphasize that when you're talking to them. The next recommendation is to remember the basics when you're rolling out your AI coding strategy. And this is, so one example being AI can edit and delete code. And so personally I had the experience of needing to modify what the AI had done, and so I needed to be able to roll back. Most tools are going to have some sort of rollback functionality now. Often they're able to do this, but it's just important to consider this or consider your chosen tool's failure modes. Another one is to get alignment with your team on how you're going to consider AI. For example, how responsible are developers going to be for the code they're producing? So that on one hand, you could have developers say this code was generated by AI, and on the other hand, you could say that every line of code that AI produces for you, you need to be fully responsible for that and make sure that you've analyzed it and read it yourself and figured out how exactly it works before you put up your pull request. At my company, because we're in healthcare, we need to be on the higher quality, lower speed side of things. But depending on your company, you may view this trade-off very differently. And then there's architecture. So LLMs or AI coding tools can be overwhelmed by large code bases. We've seen that they know a lot of different architectures, but if you've got a number of different ways that you have coded things in your code base, and you've got sort of a legacy version versus a new version, it's not going to know which one's the older versus the newer one. And this is where you need to be there because you're in the code reviews and in the team discussions. And so that's where you as the coder should be providing that context. And then lastly, we've got security. I keep coming back to this. I just think it's really important to keep in mind that you're thinking about security and you've got maybe testing in place or that sort of thing to make sure that you don't become a statistic. And then next we've got this I think this is a really good opportunity in the software domain to use this opportunity to explore new coding workflows. So the first one, the cleanest one, is to just break down your tasks and have AI create code for you. You review it, you commit it. But then the next one, slightly less intuitive, is to work with AI to develop a plan for a particular feature that you might be working on and have it poke holes in that plan and come up with new ways of tackling it and sort of refine that plan before you then go on to create a document which outlines the requirements, the architecture. You can get as detailed as you want, and then use that document to try to single shot the feature. And so people have had some really good success doing this. And then the last one is to use a high-level tool to quickly mock up a new, say, product and modify it in the high-level tool. Then when you feel comfortable with it, committing it to version control, and then pulling it out with a lower-level tool to get that code ready for production. And I've got a couple more comments here, a bit more about like just getting into the weeds for the detail, but in order to have some time at the end, I'll just wrap up by saying that AI coding tools can be a huge productivity boost, but just make sure that when you're implementing them, that you're thinking about the impact they can potentially have on code quality and team culture and security. Thank you. So an example of a tool that I would have used is when I'm trying to take data formatted in a particular way, and then I'm trying to like convert it into JSON and then put it into. So this example, I was trying to convert it to a format that I could use for the vector search for putting into a RAG database, and so I was able to really quickly create from a Word document a JSON object that had the array of all the different parts of the table, and that was easy for the AI to then interpret. So I found that like saved me so much time. That was actually probably what I was thinking about when I added that point. How do you evaluate the security risk? So I do think I kind of like had talked about, mentioned the way I'm sort of thinking about it these days, which is that there are millions of companies in the world, and if not one single news story has come across my desk saying that there's been an issue, then maybe I shouldn't be too paranoid about putting code into an LLM. We generally are using the bigger companies like OpenAI and Anthropic, and so I think those are relatively safe. And so I'm going to move forward tentatively with that perspective, partly because the developers really want to be able to use big models for whatever they want anyway, and so they're probably going to do it behind my back regardless. So the first time I heard this 5 to 10x gain was actually like well over a year ago, probably 18 months or could have been 2 years ago, where the CEO was talking to me and one of the co-ops that had just started. And the CEO says to us, like, how are you finding that LLMs are impacting your productivity? And the co-op's like really eagerly like using AI, and he said, oh, maybe 5 or 10. And I thought for sure he was going to say percent. And when he said 5 to 10 times, I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. I was hearing that like seniors are getting more advantages out of it, but like when the juniors are getting that sort of feeling that level of improved productivity, really need to look into this. And so depending on the task, how routine it is, you can definitely see that 5 to 10x gain. Like Unit tests, definitely a really good use case for them. That's my time. Thanks very much.